In the first two parts of this series, we discussed different categories of law in the Old Testament, and why this means it can be perfectly legitimate to continue to observe some while ignoring others. You again? I finished this series long ago.
Yeah, well, I got a problem with all of this. Let's say your interpretation is accurate. Well, that demonstrates the complete lack of moral relevance of the Bible to our time and culture. It also virtually destroys any claims to the Bible's divine inspiration, because it clearly has no moral insights beyond that of a first-century Middle Eastern tribal culture.
Yeah, that's an unreasonable demand invented in modern times by members of a culture that thinks too highly of itself. Sit down. Okay, although this objection is pretty darn bigoted, let's take it seriously for a moment. The real question is, does the contextualized relevance of the law, and other parts of the Bible as well, demonstrate both a lack of relevance to our culture and indicate a lack of inspiration? Generally, there are three arguments that can be pushed back at this sort of objection. One is that any set of moral instructions that would be able to cover every time and culture would be either too vague to be of much use to anyone, or else so comprehensive as to be logistically impossible. Think about this. A Bible that covered every chronological and cultural situation isn't something you'd be able to tote to church with you on Sunday, not unless you wanted to bring it in a moving van. The second point is that God seeks disciples, not people who want things handed to them on a platter. So there's no reason why readers shouldn't be expected to do a little serious study. I covered this sort of thing in 2 prior vids, so I'll leave it at that. The third reason is probably the most important one. The biggest problem here is that the modern reader is obsessed with relevance. The dichotomy here is pretty stark. It must be relevant to us now, or else it's just cluttering up the Bible. Well, that's more a perception of our own self-importance than it is of the nature of the Bible. But here's the reality. The Bible does contain many timeless universal truths. I dare say if you extracted them and put them in one book, it would be a book no larger than the Epistle of James once you eliminated all the repetition, or material that is thematically similar. In fact, I put together this ebook, the Direct Application New Testament, in good part to make it easier for readers to extract the essentials. But is the rest just clutter? Well, no. What it actually is can be expressed by analogy. When you go to a pack and ship store to send something small and breakable, they don't just dump it in a box. They cover it with styrofoam peanuts, secure it with packing tape, and stamp fragile all over it, so that in some cases the delivery people can throw it over a fence when they get where it belongs. But that's another issue. The so-called clutter of the Bible is just like that, a sort of genre package designed to deliver the universal and timeless kernel safely to others. Without this packaging, what would be left for Israel in 1400 BC? Not much. A very short text that would require a great deal of interpretation to show how it was relevant to them in their own lifetimes. In other words, the application, as well as the exhortation, is what much of that clutter is. Yet it is that very clutter that would persuade them of the necessity to preserve and pass on the whole, including those timeless universal kernels. In all of this, I have little sympathy for the modern reader who complains that it can be a lot of work to figure out what is universal and what is local or temporal application. It isn't. The Direct Application New Testament wasn't rocket science to put together, and it's nothing that could not have been done by any Christian or even any fundy atheist willing to give up watching Big Bang Theory for a few weeks. So it's time for many of us to get past the fundamentalist and fundy atheist attitude that says either all of the Bible is relevant to us today, or none of it at all is, right?
Speak for yourself. I think this thing would have been a lot more entertaining as a pop-up book.
See you next time.